What's up, football world? I am Bucky Brooks. This is the Bucky Brooks Show. And man, I just love being able to react to great content pieces that are provided by others. So I want to shout out The Athletic. I want to shout out Mike Sando, who did a great job of putting out this quarterback tiers piece. And in this piece, and I think is really interesting, he has done this for a long time. I think since 2014, he's talked about it, where he polls a bunch of executives and coaches to kind of get their take on the quarterback position. And what I want to do is react to some of the things that I saw on this list, some of the things that I read in terms of the commentary provided by the coaches and executives, and then kind of take you behind the curtain when it comes to why executives see some of these guys the way that they see them, but also give you my take on which guys I may view as overrated, underrated, and some of the interesting things that we should pull out when it comes to the last tier. But let's pop up that graphic again and let's talk about these tiers and what it really means. And so you see that they have it broken down in 4 different tiers, tier 1 being the best of the best. And I think it's really interesting when they gave the description on what a tier 1 guy is. A tier 1 guy is a quarterback that carries the team wins because of him, and he doesn't have any glaring holes in his game. Going all the way back to when I first started podcasting, my old partner, Daniel Jeremiah, and I kind of coined the phrase trucks and trailers, and that quarterbacks kind of fell into those 2 categories. Either they're a truck where they carry the team, or they're a trailer where the team carries them. When I think about that elite tier that they've described in tier 1, Pat Mahomes, Josh Allen, Matthew Stafford, Joe Burrow, there is no question that these guys are the trucks of their team, meaning that they carry the team rises and falls on their performance, and you know what you're getting each and every week because they got to deliver A+ performance for their team to win. Now, normally we think about 32, 35 quarterbacks that we can put on this list. We always like to coin elite. And for them to only have 4 players that are in that elite category, I think that is about right. If we think about the number of guys that walk the earth, so you talk about 32 guys, 4, we're talking about just the top 10% basically of the league. And these quarterbacks, I think you could say it, like Pat Mahomes is basically the current version of the best quarterback that we've ever seen. We think about all the Super Bowl success, how they dominated for a run. And even though he's coming off an ACL injury, I don't think there's any disputing his dominance in the league since he stepped in as the starter. The same could be said for Josh Allen, just a freak of nature in terms of a big physical playmaker that can really get it done as a runner, as Thor. Anytime you see someone who consistently puts up 25 pass touchdowns, 10 rush touchdowns, you have to respect their game as a dual threat. And the fact that he's done it over multiple seasons, you certainly give him his due as a dominant player. Matthew Stafford, who has been able to do it in the twilight of his career. There was a stretch there in Detroit where people talked about him being the MVP that no one recognized. Well, now he finally has been able to get that recognition by going to the Rams, linking up with Sean McVay and a talented cast around him, but playing not only at a Super Bowl level where he won a Super Bowl a few years ago, but now he finally has that MVP to pretty much validate his career and probably stamp him as a gold jacket guy a few years down the road. And then Joe Burrow. I think the thing about Joe Burrow is we always wonder how good could this Cincinnati team be if Joe Burrow had a defense that would back him up. There's no doubt that when he is healthy and available, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. We've seen the connection that he has with T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and just the way that this offense operates when he is there. Ultimate point guard, makes it easy for Zach Taylor to call the plays, and more importantly, he just makes it easy for his team to get in the winner's circle when he's playing at a high level. That said, they haven't been able to win of late because the defense has been so awful that they just are always playing in these shootouts, and he can't sustain it. But it's one of the reasons why we always view the Cincinnati Bengals not only as a dark horse playoff contender, but an eventual title contender, is because week after week, if you stack number 9 against other quarterbacks in a shootout, there are few guys that you would take over number 9, Joe Burrow, in a shootout. The fact that these guys are elite, I think the description right there just says it. Every player that is in that top 4, we've all seen them exhibit the takeover potential that you want to see from a QB1, and they have continued to redefine what we believe franchise quarterbacks to be: dominant players that can put the team on their back when it's needed, and they do it time and time again. That's why I have no qualms about the tier 1 in this group. Now, when we go back and look at the list and we see these tiers, I think it's interesting that at number 5, Lamar Jackson is not included in the tier 1 conversation. Now, when I'm talking about Lamar Jackson, I think it's really important to note who were the guys that comprised this list. 21 executives, 29 coaches made up this list. Interestingly, of the executives, 8 general managers, 5 assistant general managers, 5 ex or former general managers, and then 3 personnel executives. That's interesting because these are the team builders, the guys that put it together. They really have a high regard and high standards for what they say franchise quarterbacks are. But when we go to the coaching side, these are the people that have to either play with or against the quarterbacks that we're talking about. 9 head coaches, 10 defensive coordinators, and 5 offensive coordinators. This is important because when I think about head coach gets to pick who he wants to be the franchise quarterback. The quarterback is the one who is the most important and the most impactful on the team. So as a head coach, man, who would I want to give the ball to and really trust to play the team with? Then from a defensive standpoint, the defensive coordinator, they always will tell you the truth on who a quarterback really is, either by the way that they talk about him or the way that they play against him, meaning the tactics, the strategies, what they want to take away, what they want to make them prove on a weekly basis. That says a lot. And then finally, to have the 5 offensive coordinators there, hey, who can I build? Who do I want to build around? That speaks volumes. So to have these many guys commenting on the quarterbacks, you kind of eliminate some of the biases that can impact the way that you make these lists. That's why when I see Lamar Jackson out of the top 5 and viewed as a tier 2 quarterback, to me, that is very, very telling about how the people view the guy that I would say is the GOAT when it comes to dual threat quarterbacks in NFL history. Lamar Jackson has over 22,000 pass yards, 6,500 rush yards. He's been a guy that has put the ball in the paint over 210 times, either as a passer or as a runner. When you think about that, 2-time MVP, 3 All-Pros berths on his resume, there are not many guys that are better than him in terms of being able to really get it done. The fact that now we're having this conversation that he is no longer regarded as elite, that means that people view 2025 as the beginning of the decline on one of the greatest players that we've seen in this league. Now, I understand why that happens. Last year, Lamar Jackson only had 300 rushing yards. It's the lowest career total that he's had in his time in the league. Not only that, he only had 2,500 pass yards and 21-7 touchdown to interception ratio. We can put that on a lot of things. We can put that on the offense coordinator. We can put that on John Harbaugh and this team just kind of being still. But really what we're seeing is the bumps and bruises, the minor injuries, the things that kind of kept him in and out of the lineup. Have we begun to see Superman begin to lose some of his powers? Are the injuries a kryptonite? Is the heavy workload finally catching up with him, where you had over 1,000 rush attempts beginning to impact how Lamar Jackson moves around? And it comes at a really, really interesting time where the Ravens are at a crossroads when it comes to their franchise quarterback. Deal is coming up. You got to make a decision on whether you want to extend it, and not only whether you want to extend it, but at what rate do you want to put that money? Do you want to put him in $60 million annually? Someone that may be declining? I think this is really telling. When we pull up the odds, FanDuel Sportsbook right now says, hey, over 3,200 pass yards. Right now he's sitting at minus 114. I'll say this about Lamar. I don't know, man. Like, you have Declan Doyle coming over from the Chicago Bears to be the offensive coordinator. You have Lamar coming off a season where he wasn't quite at the MVP level, and he's no longer, well, he didn't use his legs last year. Can Lamar Jackson do something that most athletic quarterbacks can't do? Transition from being a dual threat quarterback to being a traditional pocket passer that wins primarily from the pocket against teams and their different tactics that were once designed to slow him down as a runner, but maybe you don't feel that he can be the running threat that he once was. Do you load the zone and dare number 8 to beat you from the pocket? To me, this is a huge year for Lamar Jackson, because we no longer consider him elite. How can the Baltimore Ravens break the bank? We'll see how it plays out this year. But Lamar Jackson, not considered elite by the masses, man, that is a marquee headline to talk about going into the 2026 campaign. And it should be fuel for Lamar Jackson to show and prove people that he's still one of the best to do it and still want to continue to do it at a high level. That is a fascinating discussion that we'll continue to have about Lamar Jackson. Now, when we go back to the list, I'm going to say this now. It drives me crazy, and no ill will intended. Justin Herbert is ranked right up under Lamar Jackson. Justin Herbert, I mean, have we ever talked about someone who has been elevated by so many people? Because when you look at him, there's no doubt, like, he's a prototype. Going back to my days as a scout, we always talked about what franchise quarterback should look like, should feel like. Well, when you look at Justin Herbert, he checks off all the boxes. Body beautiful athlete who can deal from the pocket, but also get outside and extend plays when he needs to. He has the size, he has the arm talent, he has the mobility, he has the intelligence to do all the things that any imaginative offensive coordinator wants to bring to the table. He can make those X's and O's come to life. And it's one of the reasons why he was the fastest quarterback in NFL history to 20,000 yards. It is one of the reasons why people have lauded him as a blue chip talent who, man, if he only had all of these different things, whether it's, hey, if he only had the right offensive coordinator, if he only had the right playmakers around him, if he only could be protected in the pocket, imagine what Justin Herbert can be. But the reality is he hasn't quite lived up to those things when it comes to the postseason. For all of the great regular season accomplishment that Justin Herbert has on his resume, he doesn't have any playoff wins. And when you look at the notable drop-off for Justin Herbert, where, look, in the regular season, he's averaging 261.3 pass yards per game. He has a passer rating of 96.3 during the regular season. When we go to the postseason, those numbers fall off significantly. 224.7 pass yards, a passer rating of 64.7, 0 wins in the postseason. Now, I know people get mad about that stat when we talk about quarterback wins and those things. Like, how can you attribute it to the quarterback? Because that's what a quarterback is supposed to do. He is supposed to lead your team to wins, and Justin Herbert hasn't been able to do that. So I do understand while there's this faction of coaches and executives that look in Justin Herbert and they ooh and ah and talk about the potential, and they just say, hey, if he can just do this. But at some point, we call a spade a spade. Right now, Justin Herbert is overrated, meaning we are rating him like he is a fringe elite quarterback, but he doesn't have elite performances when it matters most to validate it. Maybe it changes this year with Mike McDaniel coming over from the Miami Dolphins to put in an offense that is better suited to the talents that Justin Herbert has displayed. But until then, I mean, as the producer Brandon said, he's the if man. If everything is right, he'll get it right. But at some point, he has to make it right, or we can't keep ranking him as one of these borderline elite guys, a borderline top 5 guy. So Justin Herbert, it's on you to show and prove that you are what they say you are and will be going forward 2026 and beyond. Now, if I talk about overrated being Justin Herbert, I got to tell you, underrated, Dak Prescott, Jared Goff. I am so glad that they're finally getting their due. They're put in tier 2 category. But if you just listen to the words and the buzz around these guys when you hear their names mentioned, you would think that these guys were in one of those bottom tiers. But I'm loving the fact that the evaluators are finally respecting these guys for what they've been able to do between the lines. Dak Prescott first. Let's talk about it. 4 4,000-yard seasons, 26 game-winning drives, 19 fourth-quarter comebacks. When you go back 2 of the last 3 years, Dak Prescott has been number 1 in completions. He had 36 touchdowns in one of those seasons where he torched the league. He has shown that, look, man, when he's available and right, they can get it done. When you think about this offense last year, George Pickens on the outside, CeeDee Lamb on the other side, you got Jake Ferguson in the middle. There are not many people that can match up to this Cowboys offense when number 4 is willing and dealing. And the fact that people can bring in the intangible qualities, the leadership ability, and all those things, you have to like that. But if I'm going to go hard at Justin Herbert, I got to go hard at Dak Prescott. They got to win in the postseason. And so for Dak Prescott to get his due where he is recognized and viewed as an elite player, he certainly has to get it done in the postseason. I'll have recognized that. But too often people view him as a polarizing figure who shouldn't be viewed as an elite quarterback. I'm just telling you, the numbers and the tape suggest that Dak Prescott is closer to elite than you think. That's why we got to give number 4 his flowers for being a top 10 quarterback. On the other side, Jared Goff. Jared Goff was the number 1 overall pick. However, for whatever reason, when Jared Goff was in LA, people always talked about the Sean McVay factor. Sean McVay elevated him, propped him up. And even though he was having a ton of success, we always credited the play caller rather than the playmaker in Jared Goff. He goes to Detroit, and many of us saw that as a death sentence. He can't go to Detroit and continue to win. They are just trading him away there so they eventually can get on to the next quarterback to lead their franchise in Detroit. But what happened, lo and behold, Jared Goff showed people he's a much better quarterback than you thought. But once again, the conversation went to not the playmaker, it went to the play caller and Ben Johnson. And I understand why, because since 2022, no one has been more productive than Jared Goff by all the metrics that you want to say. But Ben Johnson was viewed as the guy that elevated him. Ben Johnson was the one that was viewed as kind of taking the X's and O's and making the game easy for the quarterback. Well, that was true. But last year, you removed Ben Johnson and nothing changed. The Detroit Lions continue to operate at a high level, and they had a ton of success with number 16, Willen and Dillon. I think Jared Goff deserves his flowers. He should continue to be viewed and celebrated as an elite guy. That's why I wanted to make sure that I talk about him being one of the more underrated quarterbacks in this league. All right, guys, I got to tell you a quick story. And I know we're in the middle of pod and those things. I normally try not to divulge too much personal stuff, but I got to say this, man, I am in the mix of looking for a landscaper because I had a previous guy kind of drop on me. And I've been searching everywhere trying to find these people. And so sometimes it takes a friend of a friend to kind of lead you that way. And it doesn't seem like a big ask, but sometimes it can be a lot for someone to go the extra mile and kind of help you do it. So I have a guy who has helped me, my guy, Jose, who has really left a positive impression on me because he just does the little things well. And so he just started, he's doing all the other stuff. He's taking care of all the stuff. He'll take the trash cans around to the front and kind of do the extra stuff that you don't even ask him to do. And so me as a business owner, if I'm hiring, I want a great candidate who can also go the extra step and kind of help me and stand out from others. And so that's why I am all about ZipRecruiter, because right now you can try it out for free at ziprecruiter.com/audio and find guys that can help you beyond what the job description is. And ZipRecruiter has a new feature that'll show you the most interested and qualified candidates first, so you meet the right people faster. ZipRecruiter has powerful matching technology. They find the qualified candidates quickly, and the candidates can tell you in their own words why they're interested in your job. It's no wonder why ZipRecruiter is the #1 rated hiring site based on G2. Try ZipRecruiter, meet great candidates who will go the extra step for you. I just love what I'm seeing, and I understand why 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Try for free today at ziprecruiter.com/audio. That's ziprecruiter/audio. ZipRecruiter, meet your match on ZipRecruiter. So now let's go back to the list, because there's some other things that kind of stand out to me when I look at this list. One, when we're finishing up tier 2, there are a few different things that stand out to me. One, there's a lot of love on the street for Brock Purdy. And it's interesting because of the guys that he's ranked ahead of, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, even Trevor Lawrence and Jalen Hurts. I would say that he is probably viewed as the least talented in terms of physically than those guys. And some would say that of the guys that he's ahead of, maybe he is more impacted by the system than anybody else, because Kyle Shanahan does such a great job of kind of setting him up for success, and the weapons around him are elite. Regardless of what you say about the availability due to injuries, it's hard to find a team that has Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, and a play caller like Kyle Shanahan. You have to like that. But I think there's a lot of love from executives and coaches in terms of his ability to minimize his mistakes, his ability to operate at a high level. So Brock Purdy, whether you say, hey, it's the talent or the tactics, you have to give him his due. And there's a reason why the San Francisco 49ers are always in the conversation. But let's go beyond that. Right up under him, Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams is a fascinating study because last year the numbers were not spectacular in terms of the completion percentage, a sub 60% passer. But what he does is, man, there's not many people that know how to finish the game like Caleb Williams. I think he has 7 fourth quarter comebacks. We saw him kind of become the Iceman, as he dubbed himself, late in games. And there's a lot of reason to believe that Caleb Williams will not only be better, but the Bears can ascend, because as he gets more comfortable with Ben Johnson, you have to love the combination of play caller and playmaker at the position. And as he learns how to get away from some of the hero throws that can turn into turnovers, man, a more efficient Caleb Williams is a more dangerous Bears offense. 2 guys that stand out, and they're both guys that have been kind of reclamation projects. Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield. The fact that they're ranked back-to-back to me stands out because it speaks volumes about the grit and the resilience that each of these guys have displayed along their journey. Baker Mayfield having a flash in LA, then going to Tampa and being a guy that has been worthy of getting a big time contract, even though it hasn't come to fruition now. But I think you have seen him kind of step in for Tom Brady and this team be a team that is kind of dominated in the NFC South. For Sam Darnold, obviously he is validated by the fact that he won a Super Bowl. Even though he was super successful in Minnesota, the postseason struggles certainly changed the way that we thought about those seasons, where we just didn't know if the clock was going to strike midnight on the quarterback Cinderella. Well, by going to Seattle, playing successfully under Clint Kubiak, and leading the Seahawks to a Super Bowl title, he's kind of been validated and stamped as a made man. We'll continue to see if he's able to do it with a new offensive coordinator now that Kubiak has his own show with the Las Vegas Raiders. But man, a lot of buzz, a lot of positive spin, and a lot of guys that had those reports on Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold, they were able to kind of scream with their chest poked out about, hey, I told you these guys were going to be what I said they are. They finally have kind of played up to that. And I'm going to say there's 2 guys that are controversial and maybe even polarizing in tier 2, Trevor Lawrence, Jalen Hurts. Trevor Lawrence, the number 1 pick a few years ago, finally has shown flashes of being the guy that many celebrated as probably the top quarterback prospect that we had seen prior to the draft since John Elway. Well, now he is linked up with an offensive play caller in Liam Cohen that has really brought that out. 38 total touchdowns last year, played at an MVP level down the stretch to the point where he was in the top 5 when it came to finalists. Got to like that. You got to like where he's trending. And then Jalen Hurts. Man, we are talking about giving this guy's job away just because of the way that offense looked. But he has only been a guy that has led this team to 2 Super Bowls. They've won 1. He's been an MVP in one of those. And people have said he has outplayed the guy that we talk about being the undisputed QB1 in the league in Pat Mahomes in each of those high leverage games. I think we have to really give him credit for being able to do it. Now, it may not look like we always want to look as unconventional because he did early in his career rely so heavily on his legs. We will see if he is able to transition under Sean Mannion and this new offense in Philly. But the fact that right now he's teetering on the brink of falling into tier 3 says a lot about how the league views him as a QB1. Now, there's some other notes that stand out when we go back to tier 3 and tier 4. Let's pop that up so we can talk about it so you get a visual. Bo Nix. Bo Nix might be a guy that is the hardest one to understand when you're an executive and evaluator in terms of his success. Bo Nix last year, passer rating 87.8, which is average by all standards. Numbers 25 and 11, touchdown to interceptions, but 7 game-winning drives. Led the league in that category. So when they need him to do it, he does it. So is this Sean Payton holding Bo Nix back until the game is on the line, or is this Bo Nix being able to rise to the occasion when they need him most? We got to figure that out because I don't know if we can accurately assess Bo Nix until we're able to separate the play caller from what the playmaker does when they really need him. CJ Stroud, there's never been a greater drop-off maybe in recent years than the one that we've seen with CJ Stroud. After CJ Stroud's rookie season, we were talking about him knocking on the door of being elite. Last few seasons have not been that in terms of he hasn't played at that same level that really made us fall in love with him as a pocket passer. And then the images of how he struggled in the postseason has completely rewritten the narrative on who he is. Even though he's won a playoff game in each of the 3 seasons that the Texans have gone to the playoffs with him at the helm, you still don't know who he is or what he is. That's shocking given how he started. But man, there's not a more polarizing quarterback than CJ Stroud in the league right now. That's why this season is a make or break season for him in Houston. And then the final thing that we have to talk about, the 2025 quarterback class, where we have some fantastic guys, Cam Ward, Tyler Shough, Jaxson Dart. The fact that Jaxson Dart ranks ahead of Tyler Shough and Cam Ward, interesting. And I get it. Jaxson Dart had 15 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. He dazzled the time with his legs. He has that swag that you look for that a lot of people are banking on helping kind of reverse the fortunes for the New York Giants. But man, Cam Ward was the #1 overall pick. Cam Ward was a guy that was viewed as a more talented player. We have him down a bit from Jaxson Dart, which is interesting. And then Tyler Shough, who came on like gangbusters, and people have made the case that maybe he is the belle of the ball when it comes to the 2025 class. Jaxson Dart rates ahead of both of those guys. This conversation, competition, and discussion will continue to go on as we try and figure out which second-year quarterback is going to make the biggest jump. Maybe it's a part of Matt Nagy, Brian Daboll, and even Kellen Moore's decision to try and figure out different ways to build the offenses around these respective young quarterbacks. But we know we will revisit that conversation at the end of 2026. As I said, man, Mike Sando did a great job. The Athletic does a great job of putting this piece out. We love to rank and bank quarterbacks, but to put them in tiers provides a little perspective, particularly when it's done by the people that do this for a living, general managers, coaches, and those things. I love talking about this stuff, just like I love talking about all kinds of things when it comes to the NFL and ranking and rating and reviewing all the things that are going on. And speaking of ranking, rating, and reviewing, make sure you give the Bucky Brooks podcast a little review. Rank it and bank it. Talk about what you like, what you don't like, how can we make it better. Make sure you continue to revisit and visit all the things that we're doing at the Bleav Network. Until next time, I'm Bucky Brooks. This is the Bucky Brooks Show, and I am